Hi there, I'm Marie Bowser, licensed acupuncturist, an expert in the Chinese medicine five elements. At the time of recording this, we are in the season of autumn, which is ruled by the metal element. One of the themes of the metal element is the idea of assessment, looking at where we set out to get to and whether or not we're on track. So in the autumn, it's like, we're entering the fourth quarter of the year. And for some of us, there are business goals we may have set out to do. We may have had health goals that we set out to work on. And so it's a really potent time to take a look at where you thought you'd be, whether you're there, whether there are any modifications you need to do to get there, or whether you need to adjust your expectations so that this can inform your plans for the following year, or even inform the pace at which you're operating through through the rest of the year. And that's it. That's a whole other conversation. The pace at which you decide to complete these goals. There's always sort of a concern that we don't push ourselves so hard as the energy of the year kind of uh, starts to go more inward. Historically, these would be more practical questions like, do we have enough food to get through the winter? Is our home secure? Will it get us through the winter? Those types of survival questions. Nowadays, these these assessment moments are a little bit more, these are modern takes on these assessment questions. So I thought it would be a really interesting time to talk to someone who works with people on achieving goals, and in particular, the goals of health and fitness. With that, I'm really excited to have my colleague, Darren Moore of Between the Ears Coaching. He's a nationally board certified health coach and fitness instructor. And today he and I are going to discuss the idea of assessment, the metal element, and geek out on like how to make fitness fun and how to be sustainable in the way that we approach our health. Darren, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Marie.
I think it's powerful when people hear our own personal stories so that they can get inspired by what it is that's like leading us to do the work that we do. Is there
Mhm.
anything that you would like to share about your personal journey with us?
Yeah. So I want to thank you for allowing me to speak this again because as I speak it, I get to release, you know, a lot of pain that I've been carrying for decades. Um, and my story began, like I think a lot of people's story, with hearing a message from somewhere and us believing that message. And that message that I heard decades ago was that I was fat, black, ugly, and gay. And the gay word I'm throwing in, that's not what this person or these people said. But but hearing that just went through me like a like an atomic bomb of shame and of self-loathing. And ever since hearing that, when I heard that, um, you know, my entryway, my journey towards where I am now, it started the motivation for it was around me wanting to be accepted and loved. Because when I heard that, what I heard was, I'm not worthy.
Mm.
I'm not enough. I'm not loved, lovable. And that was just devastating. And at that moment when I heard that message as a young boy, I was determined to find love and acceptance. And so there was a period of time after high school, after high school, but before I joined the military, so young adult. that my weight ballooned because I was depressed and dealing with those words in my brain, plus other things that were going on in my life. But what I thought was going to be the solution to that was
Mhm.
that, well, I can't change the black part. I can hide the gay part. The ugly part, well, I thought because my weight had blew up, if I got thinner, then that is part of my outward appearance. And if I would change that, then maybe that would get me closer towards finding love and acceptance. And so I went on this journey of losing 70 something pounds. Uh, but it was, but again, it was all for love and acceptance. What I thought I was going to get, love and acceptance. Now, in hindsight, what it should have been my motivation was the fact that I have a family history of diabetes
Ah,
and lost family members from diabetes at the time and since then. And my eating behaviors, because I wasn't taught to emotionally regulate and do my emotions and um, would have been, should have been that my motivations, like wanting to live a high quality life to where, like I am right now. I mean, I'm 58 years old now. But again, that wasn't what my motivation was. It was externally focused. Okay, right?
mhm,
Being accepted, love, because I thought I was broken, shame. So I thought I would just change my body. That much I can change, and the other things I can hide.
mhm,
And so that's what got me into um, um, health and wellness. But it came that way. I've since shifted what my motivation is, but that was my initial motivation was because I thought I wasn't worthy and I wasn't worthy of love and belonging. And so, yeah, I'm, so now, it's part of one of my missions in my business and work and where I show up in the world is first and foremost remind people that they may, they're imperfect, but they're okay.
yeah,
And that they're whole, perfect, and complete. And that, yeah, I want to fight against, this idea that beauty looks a certain way, it's the standardized, beauty, all that. I want to fight against that and get people, remind people that they're okay, they're
yeah.
fine. Yeah.
That's a very safe stance to come from as somebody who's going to guide people to stronger health. I mean, I feel like the things that you just touched on are very universal.
Hmm.
Um, and the fact that you've been there, right, it's I don't know, I think it probably makes people feel very comfortable.
Mm.
Mm, and
Yeah. Yeah. I'd like to think that, I believe in the power of connection and
mhm,
community and the impact that we can have on each other positively. I mean, we're human, and one of the things that makes us human is that we're wired for connection.
mhm,
And it's a powerful thing when two people can support each other and help. Magical things, transformation can happen in that way. And I've learned that for me, I believe that's why I'm here. One of the reasons why I'm here. I think we all are here for certain reasons to show up in the world. And I think my purpose, my gift is reminding people that they can do it, that they're okay and they're lovable and they have the power within and that, I'm a coach at heart. I'm a motivator at heart. I'm
yeah.
sensitive.
I can attest. I had a session with you, and um, yeah, it was a very encouraging experience, and I felt like it was impactful. It changed a lot
Mm,
of things about how I approach my food and my fitness, and very encouraging. So yeah, I've seen it firsthand too. I can attest. Um, your business name is Between the Ears Health and Wellness Coaching.
mhm.
Do you want to share a little bit about, or can you share a little bit about the sort of the idea behind?
Yeah. So what I've learned through these decades is that I am fascinated by human behavior. I've always been fascinated by human behavior, starting with my own. Like, why have I made these? Do I make these choices? Why do people make choices? Why do people do what they do? Always been fascinated by that. That's the first thing. And through that journey of realizing and trying to understand where that fascination came from, um, what what I realized was, or made the connection was, our behaviors and are driven from or start from our thoughts, our brain, right? And when I learned about, the dopamine effect, and I took some courses around behavior change and learned about how power of dopamine and how it impacts our behaviors, right? Uh and it starts at an early age, a very early age. um I found that super fascinating because then I was trying to find the key, like why do we do what we do?
Mhm.
And part of it is dopamine. It's has an impact, to that. And so let me roll back a little bit. I mean, before I started to go down that path around behavior change, for me, my entry into fitness, right, was just around losing weight. So it was about lifting, exercising, and that's pretty much what I focused on in the early years. But as the decades went on, and as I stayed in touch, and the fitness industry shifted to more of a wellness industry, which is why my business is wellness coaching. Um, I started to expand my understanding of what is, and that it's more about wellness, and it's about different parts, different aspects of our life. That it's more than just a kettlebell swing or apple a day. That it's more about wellness and how we feel, right? So then when I started to look at it from that perspective and thinking about different lifestyle behaviors that go into our wellness, right? Meaning our sleep quality, our emotional regulation or stress management. Uh, Obviously, we said nutrition and exercise. Those were the first two that I came in. But social connection, those different pillars are really behaviors. Like, how are we sleeping? How do we emotionally regulate? How are we managing stress? How are we? So it's behavior. So that's where the connection came in. It's about behaviors. And even if you look at the exercise piece or the nutrition piece, at the core of that, we're talking about behaviors. Why do we make the choices that we make when we're fueling our body?
Mhm.
Why do we make the choices or not make the choices we make to move or not move? And then what I mean, if you pick all of those pillars, there's behaviors that are go along with that. And so that's where the connection came in. It's all about behavior change.
Mhm.
And because I consider myself an agent of change, because it's about behaviors, that's where the between the ears came from, because it's all in our mind. It's behavior start our thought, how we approach it. The dopamine effect can either solidify or us doing behaviors that are either serving us or not serving us, but it starts there between our ears.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so that's kind of how it all came about, where between the ears, uh the business name and what my philosophy is was kind of birthed out of that behaviors.
Got it. Do you work with people who deal with autoimmune conditions or chronic conditions? I know a lot of my community, I have a wide variety of
Mm,
patient concerns. Some
yeah.
some people are very fit and have strong joint mobility, and I have some patients who they deal with pain in their joints or fatigue. Do you help those people, and can they be helped by fitness? Uh,
Yeah. I currently don't have any clients who have been diagnosed with any autoimmune diseases. Um, However, coaching can be beneficial. health
Mhm,
and fitness can be. So it's important to know that there's a difference between health coaching
mhm,
and actually uh, personal training or helping someone feel stronger in their body, improving their muscular skeletal health,
mhm,
right? So a person who is focused and clear on their desire to improve their muscular skeletal health, but
mhm,
may be unsure where to start,
mhm,
they don't want to hurt themselves. They need education. They need instruction on how to perform exercises safely. That's the job of a personal trainer, and that's something that I am certified in, and I can help people with that.
right,
That's different. So when I have a client, I am in instructor mode.
mhm,
When I am in health coaching mode, that is more a collaborative process where we're engaging me and the client in thought-provoking conversations to identify what behaviors slash back to that behaviors thing
mhm,
that they want to replace that are not serving them with new behaviors that will get them the outcomes they want. So you can fill in the blank, whatever that outcome is.
mhm,
Right? So if and it's about system building. What I do when I'm a health coach. So it's a collaborative experience. We're creating systems in people's lives, and that's just again that's another word for behaviors, right? And then more importantly, we're looking at what limiting beliefs or
mhm,
challenges that's getting in the way from creating these new behaviors systems that will get them the outcomes they desire, and together building strategies for how to get there to overcome those challenges, right? I
mhm,
remind them how to tap into the strength that they have inside, to use other experiences that have helped them be successful, and let's remind them of the strength and the tools that they have inside that they may have put their energies in other parts of their life. We bring it into this particular, right focus, whatever that is, and we're trying to get the outcome. That's what's happening in the coaching experience. We're doing that kind of work, and then more importantly, I'm encouraging them to be experimental about the process,
mhm,
right? So I'm encouraging them to try and learn, right? Not every week. If they try something, then we come and we check in and did not, it wasn't successful. It's not like it wasn't successful. There's learning in every step. So also what makes health coaching a little different is, I'm encouraging my clients to try
mhm,
and then learn from it, and then we make a tweak, try, learn constantly until we find what works for that client, right? To And then we continue moving forward, getting them to what again, putting in more systems and processes, behaviors to ultimately get the outcomes that they want. So
It's it's interesting that process of trying
mm,
and there's an interesting role that trying, persevering, and being patient can have when someone's going through a complicated health journey. Um,
mhm,
especially if someone's wanting to handle it through a more natural means, right? Or if whatever Western allopathic solution they've chosen to incorporate, if it's not happening efficiently, or the response to that treatment isn't as effective as they might want, right?
mm,
I it is interesting, and I have a lot of compassion for it when frustration sets in or impatience sets in, or uh you know yeah, feeling daunted or disappointed with
mm,
results. So I think it's like really emphasizing being open to a process is
yes.
helpful for people to kind of go into these journeys with. I mean, because it really is, it's a journey. It's not
Mm.
like, I don't know that health comes from an overnight decision.
Right. In my experience, it's not. It's not. It's an ongoing journey. And me myself, I believe that you never arrive to this you know, like, well, perfect, you're there. It's yeah, I'm there.
Ta-da! And now I can have donuts.
Yeah. It work.
If only.
Yeah. That is a constant journey, a constant tweaking because as we get more information about what we like, what we don't like, what's important to us, what's not important, our priorities change constantly as we get older, we have new information.
Yeah,
That applies with our health and well-being.
yeah,
It's constant. It's a constant journey and shifting,
yeah.
changing, being open to change. Being very open to change. Because something that I read once, and I wanted to hear if you've heard this as well. And I think it was the Buddha who said this. I'm not sure, but the source of a lot of human suffering is our resistance to change because change is constant. And if you resist that change,
Mhm,
that's where the suffering, I'm paraphrasing, but that's where it comes. And so that's part of one of my philosophies in my practice. I'm laying the groundwork with my clients, or even just wherever I show up in the world.
mhm,
If I'm having opportunities when I'm talking about this kind of, that's like the very foundation is encouraging, inviting. I like to use that word, inviting,
mhm.
'cause I'm not about telling people what to do. I like to honor people's autonomy. I think that's very important, is that people's autonomy is honored because who doesn't we want to have control over our choices and our body. That's one of our human needs is autonomy over ourselves and our choices. But, you know, reminding people that the impermanence of everything. We're in a constant state of change. And if you resist it, you resist it at your peril.
Yeah.
That's the source of suffering. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I mean, it's that philosophy. I mean, I think it might. Do I call myself a Buddhist? I definitely espouse the philosophy, and I encountered this idea of non-attachment or
Hmm.
your attachment causing suffering because in my 20s I had attachments.
Mm,
And I think it's not like I've never become free of them, but um yeah, I personally
hmm.
incorporate that philosophy into my life as a way of
Yeah.
staying neutral about what's unfolding. Because yeah, I can choose to. I mean, I think there's a dance, right? There's two ways we can go with what's happening. We can push it away and be like everything's fine,
Hmm.
or we can maybe over identify with it. I think there's some maybe it's like, well, there's another Buddhist concept of the middle path, right? I think it's
Yeah.
important to look at what's happening, feel our feelings, maybe feel a moment of disappointment or like make note of our like kind of like, oh, I'm very upset, I'm very attached.
Hmm.
To move through it, come to that realization, and come to a place of neutrality so that we can go forward and not be kind of like stuck on this is what it should be and therefore I can't move forward with
Right.
a plan for how to get through this, or
Mhm.
just to feel better in my body and my mind while
Yeah.
less than ideal circumstances are happening. That
Hmm. And what you're describing for me is a mindfulness practice, right? Being paying attention to our thoughts
mm,
and asking non this is important piece as I define mindfulness, at getting curious about them,
mm,
being non-judgmental with them, and determining whether or not that thought is serving me or
mm,
not. Because what can happen if we attach ourselves, I heard you say that, to our thoughts
mm,
and identify with them, that could be the impetus for a behavior.
mhm,
Could be a behavior that you may do that's serving you, that's, or not. It could go either way.
Yep. Yep.
And these are the kinds of conversations that I have with my clients that's at the start, because this ties back to my theory and what where my business came from, between the ears.
Yeah.
It's an inside job. Everything, it starts and ends, in my opinion, with with our mind and thoughts, and whether or not we have the capacity to just create a little bit of space, or train ourselves to create a little space between that thought that comes in our mind,
Hmm.
it's a little stimulus, so to speak, before the behavior, and then the actual response we have to that thought.
Yep.
And that is like the equation for behaviors, right? It's stimulus, some triggering thing happens, right?
Yeah.
And then we have to respond one way, and then there's a reward at the end. It's a circle, just goes around and around, right? And so part of what I practice and what I recommend in my practice with my clients is just creating some space between that stimulus and response, and getting curious about that thought that came in, and whether or not we need to take action on it or not. Maybe we do, maybe we don't, but just creating a little space. And in that space is our choice. We have choice in that space. And so yeah, it's another how where between the years came from. Also, that whole part of that practice.
There's a lot of freedom in that space. There's a lot of
Mm,
freedom to be had there.
yeah.
Um, Speaking of between the ears and this idea of so much coming from the mind, you and I played pickleball
Hmm.
last weekend.
Yes, I loved it,
It's
and I
good.
want another invite.
All right. And I shared, we all sat down afterwards and I shared a little conundrum I was having, or like could call it maybe like a sports psychology rub, which is that I have a worry because we're playing doubles, and I have a worry that if I miss the ball, I'm going to make someone mad at me. If
Mm,
we don't win the match, that I'll get in trouble, or someone will be upset. And everybody there said, yeah, that's human. We all go through that. And I know where it comes from for me. I, and I think this is maybe the source for a lot of people
yeah.
with gym class.
Mm,
So, how do you get people, and that's like, how do you help people move through an early childhood story, which is, I can't do this because it's not safe, or I can't do
mhm,
this because I created an identity around me being not fit, not into fitness, not into
mhm,
sports. You
yeah.
know, I was the kid in the black t, not me, but like someone who says I was the kid in the black t-shirt who smokes cut gym class to smoke cigarettes under the bleachers, and that's not for me.
Mhm.
What do you say? Right? Because that's,
Yeah,
we get these
that's
identities and stories.
mhm.
How do you walk people through that? How do you help people?
Yeah.
What do you? Yeah. What
Well,
happens
there's well, it's multiple strategies. So the first one, like just mentioned, is empathizing
there?
with my client, because obviously there was a painful experience that they had, and that they're not alone in
Mhm.
feeling that, and that it is human, like you were saying. So that, and reminding them of that, that's the first thing, providing the utmost empathy for them, because that's a very traumatic experience. And I started off this with my traumatic experience. It wasn't actually in gym class, but it happened in gym class. I was, shamed, and yeah,
Kick
and given a story.
for dodgeball. Sorry.
Yeah. So that's the first step in how I walk them through, is be highly empathetic to that, and remind, and first, and then the second step is you know, letting them know they're not alone, that it's human. So that's me too. The most powerful, I think, two words. And
Mm-hmm.
by the way, I heard this from someone who I adore, that I follow, who's really helped me in my journey over the past 10 years of transformation and letting go of my shame, is Brene Brown. And something she said once was, "Me too" is one of the powerful words you can tell someone who is sharing what you share with us. And that's why we all took "Me too" human. That's why we gave you that response.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that, and then the next step would be a discussion. Remember, I said so. Health coaching is asking thought-provoking questions, right? To engage, and then you know having a discussion around the client, the source of that. Now you've said your source, but let's go to that source, and then, like I said before, getting curious about and non-judgmental about. Well, is that really true? Because
Mm-hmm.
something that I've also learned in these 35 years since I lost my 70 pounds was every story that first of all, we're in charge of all the stories we tell ourselves, but also every story that we say, whether it's subconscious, it all goes in our subconscious, and we have the power to rewrite those stories with practice.
Mm-hmm.
With practice, behavior, those thoughts won't change in one isolated conversation. So as we're having this conversation with the client, I'm remind them it's about practice. Practice about how we talk to ourselves so we can rewrite the stories. Our brain is very powerful. We can rechange it with practice.
Yep.
So we may go through a series of, maybe we need to explore how we can start to include affirmations in our daily practice, finding new words to remind ourselves of what we can do, and challenge that old belief, letting go of it. And I would remind them it's not easy to let go, because if may have held on to it.
Yeah.
So that would be part of, now we're moving into looking at ways we can possibly. So I want to use this moment to interject something else about what differentiates health coaching and personal training. So part of my role is to provide recommendations. And that's important because there's a misunderstanding that health coaching is, I go to the health coach and you're going to tell me what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's absolutely not true. And that can't be true because we all are unique and different. Yes, we are human and we share things, but we're different in what we like, what we don't like, what motivates us, what pisses us. It's you different. And what I mentioned earlier around, I like to honor people's autonomy. That's a basic human need when we're birthed. Our autonomy over ourselves, and our feeling like we have control over our bodies, autonomy. So when I'm engaging and talking and getting and inviting uh, clients to explore those thoughts that they had, right? And we're digging through that, and I'm recommending or inviting them to, possibly affirmations could be it, questioning those stories. Then it could be a discussion may flow into, well, what what can we do to kind of help rewrite and let go of that? Does it mean we need to be more around a supportive environment to help us? So earlier I mentioned around the pillars of lifestyle medicine. Well, one of those pillars that I help people support is social connection, support. That's so extremely important. People who have a high amount of resilience in their lives can bounce back. If you look at, well, what goes into that high resiliency, they'll tell you they have support, they have community, they can go to someone, because it's tough changing what you just shared with me. To change it's, you got to do all these steps and strategies. And that's another one, having a community where you can feel safe, like you felt safe to share that vulnerable story with us. We gave you empathy. So there's a straight. That is all these little pieces. So those are the things. Those are the kind of conversations that I'm guiding clients to help support them to find community when they're not with me, but when they're where they're showing up, so that they can continue to release that story and step into this new way of thinking, because it's a practice, right? And that reinforcement can come by the environments and the places we show up in. That's community, where we're showing up, and are you being supported in that journey? So that's another piece. And then I would end with, but if their desire is that they want to move their bodies, though, but and what was getting in the way was because of this old story, then the next question would be, well, trying to find out, let's experiment with some new. What do you think you'd like to try? I would remind them that exercise is more than just a treadmill or a marathon or bicycling. That's just a form of exercising. Exercise is pickleball. Maybe that's your jam. Let's just try that. Maybe it's just walking. That's exercise, right? And so I would find out, are they is their understanding of what exercise, this narrow view, because I found in my experience working with clients that sometimes is the breakthrough. They thought, well, I thought I needed to go and be on a treadmill, but I really don't like running. You don't have to run. So that's also how I would probably walk through. So those are just the big highlights. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, what do you think about that?
Um, thank goodness for neuroplasticity.
Ah, that's that word. I love it. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, and the creative solutions piece. I mean,
Mhm.
going out dancing.
Come on now. Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, nowadays you can. I mean, you can dance on Sunday morning. There's like ecstatic dance. You could do it online. There's like there's like so many
Yeah.
creative ways. I have even yeah gotten up a sweat doing ping pong. So yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Um, I mentioned that we're in the season of the metal element, and we're in this, at least from a Chinese medicine perspective, that means is it's a potent moment for assessment.
Mhm.
Where are we on? Are we on track with regard to our goals for the year? Uh,
Mhm.
is there a course correction that needs to be made? Um, is there a change in what that goal needs to be? Um, and so, getting coming late into the year, um, this is thematically what I'm looking at with my patients. I'm curious from your perspective. Um, are there things that you notice in your work seasonally,
Mm.
come up seasonally, in how you work with people?
Yes, I do. I've noticed that the beginning of the year is normally a time where people are ready to take action.
Hmm.
Um, and that actually correlates with some research that I uncovered around human behavior. Again, there's that human behavior because I'm fascinated with it. And it's just, why are people more motivated to take action with their health, and we'll just say health and well being, on Mondays, like the start of the week or the start of the month or the start of the year? It's huge, right? So that correlates to what I've noticed. So the start of the year, yes. The middle of the year during summer, where summer break, and a lot of us, if we have families, it's just summer, people vacations, things kind of quiet down.
Yep.
And then when fall comes around, it's back to school, back to let's get back. So that's a starting point, yes. And then usually around the holidays, because it's the holidays and people are busy trying to do plans and travel. So people tend to reduce the amount of their focus around comes down, and then it starts back up again. Um, in January at the beginning of the year. Now, the interesting thing is between the start of the year and summer, because spring is in there, but there isn't necessarily a dip around March.
Mhm.
It just really goes from, say, January to May. that
Mhm.
I've found in the fitness wellness space that people are most and tapering off when we get to May because there's graduations, right? And so that's what I've noticed. What about you?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I definitely see a lull happen in the summer.
Hmm.
In some ways, like it matches also thematically Chinese medicine. It's like it's more playful.
Hmm.
If summer is fire element and people want to be out playing, a little bit less structured. It's like on some level, it's healthy for them to go and um, get out of their routines.
Hmm.
Um, and then the same thing I notice the winter months. There's yeah, I don't know. Is that true? Yeah, I notice. I think people in my practice want more support in the winter months. I think people will deal with like more fatigue. It's like
Hmm.
the slowest time of the year for me is summer. Um, but I do know, like even my own personal self, like as we hit winter, I start to feel a little bit less interested in being out for a walk or hike. I feel a little bit less interested in even doing like a little 10-minute wait thing inside of my
Hmm.
house. I just want to be like snuggled up with a blanket.
Hibernating.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like I think that's another human condition. I'm wondering, it's like we're not that far away from the holidays.
Right.
Um, I'm wondering if you have thoughts or advice for people about what they could do to not totally relinquish their momentum
Hmm.
as we enter the holidays, as we enter with regard to their fitness
Right.
and their
Right.
health. Yeah.
Yeah. I think the first thing would be is so I another one what I'll call some wisdom that I've learned that I like to share with my clients is consistency over intensity.
Mm,
Now, what that looks like in the context of answering your question is just if we do something that's important, that's more important than how much we do. It's whatever it is that we're going to do, that we do it more consistently. How it relates to that, how it answers that question is mindset. Now we're going to go into mindset because that's part of how I bring it to my practice, getting people to think, change their perspective, raise their awareness, and think of things from a different way. We can either look at the holidays and that colder period of time and think, well, since I am not feeling like motivated to do my full workout, so I'm just not going to do any workout because if it's not that, it's nothing because I'm not really getting benefit. They may think they're not getting any benefit because they're not doing the full. And that actually is not really true. That uh, if we're doing something, just a little something, it's compound. It's like you're getting the benefit from it. So I try to encourage them to just first of all, be kind, be self compassionate,
yeah,
practice self compassion. That, again, reminding them or not reminding them, but empathizing with how they're feeling because it's common, it's a human experience. Um, and then also encouraging them to be a little self-compassionate and not beating themselves up because what can happen also in that change is that self-talk. Well, I can't do all of it, whatever it is, and then we can start this negative self-talk and beating ourselves up, and then we just don't do anything.
yep,
So it's not about that, but then reminding them that even just a little bit. So if during even myself, I don't work out at the same intensity. No
mhm,
one at every single workout and all year long,
sure.
but I consistently move my body.
Hmm.
The intensity of it changes, but I consistently do something, move if we're just saying moving my body. And research shows that if we at least consistently just do a little, that's going to give us, that's what it will serve us. It's when we don't, and inconsistently over the course won't give us the outcomes that we want.
Mhm.
So I hope that made sense. But that it's a couple of, again, a couple of discussions, but that's part of my formula for how uh, I try to support and engage clients through those periods of the year where they're not particularly, motivated for whatever reason, just to, let's adjust. And it's okay that it's not this, just let's get some consistency, not the intense. Let's not focus on that.
Plus, it's probably really helpful to have accountability. I,
Yeah.
if I'm I think sometimes, yeah, I guess accountability to the self is maybe not always the strongest motivator. If the neural path, if the habit hasn't been, firmly established, I think it's easy.
Yeah. Well, that's a good point, and I'll add that that's what part of one of the pillars that's in my practice that I encourage people, invite them to embrace and to look at, because, oh, by the way, you know, I believe in our health and well-being should be approached holistically and not just these pieces, not just the exercise piece, but thinking from that context. Let's go back to that social connection pillar, that piece. Well, that ties into that accountability that you just mentioned.
Mhm.
And so if we are in a supportive, or we have that support system, a good friend, whatever, then we can tap into that as that accountability to help us. So it could look like you have someone who is your best friend or your partner, whatever, that you're, this is this period of time where I'm not as for whatever reason, but you're sharing that, and they could be someone to help support you. And that support could look many ways. It could just be encouraging you to, or doing some the activity with you, right? We're more likely to do things in community. So it could look like that. See? So yeah, there's so many different strategies. And so every situation, I guess what I'm saying is, whatever the challenge is, there potentially could be multiple strategies slash solutions to it. And that's what I do in the coaching relationship. Let's look at the different strategies, because what works for one may not work for others. Some people may be highly self motivated and they don't necessarily need to have a workout. I know people like that. They don't
Yeah.
need that. So, but some people need. So it, yeah, and there's no shame in any of it. It could look, we all unique in that way. And that's why I don't prescribe a set health and well-being plan for clients. It's individualized. We got to talk about it and find out what's right is going to work for you to get you through this period of, low motivation for, because of the season. There is a way
Yeah.
that forward. There always is a way forward.
It's interesting. I play with like 5 element personality typing in my
Hmm.
practice, and people who have a lot of earth in
Hmm.
their, it's based on their birth date, some of it's based on facial characteristics, but people who have a lot of earth do really well in partnership. And it's not to say that other elements don't need it or want
Yeah.
it, but like particularly, I was talking with someone recently about, they were sort of judging themselves for wanting accompaniment um, around something and really giving themselves a hard time. And I was like, it's okay. You
Mhm.
can you can want a partner in what you're up to. There's nothing, you know, I guess you could take it into codependence, sure. But like on some level, this idea of being compassionate and self-accepting and self-honoring, setting
Mm.
yourself up for success and not like shooting on yourself. Um, yeah, just like get the support. Get the support.
Yeah. So what do you do in your own experience when you go through those periods of the
Mm,
seasons and you're not feeling as motivated? What's your practice?
yeah, yeah. I dial it back. I mean, it's much in the same way, like following the rhythms of the year. The water element. season of winter asks for more stillness, asks for less rigorous activity. And so, for me, it looks like, walking as my primary
Mhm.
exercise, um, maybe shorter hikes than I might ordinarily do. There's a way that I feel like I have more energy to do that stuff, almost like I need to sweat it out a little bit more
Mhm.
in the spring and the summer, maybe a little bit into the fall, that by the time winter comes, I'm feeling I'll dial it back. The trick for me is not to go into inertia, not to stay consistent. But I feel
Right.
like I walk most days. I'll walk in the rain. Like I get my umbrella out and I'll walk.
So you consist I'm hearing is you consistently are at least just walking
Yeah,
every
yeah,
day. And that is supports, the research and my own experience that if we just it's that consistency and that walking is just has so many powerful benefits for our well-being. And
yeah.
that's okay too, if that's fine.
Yeah, I've heard it's actually like a big predictor of like health outcomes and longevity is like the amount that people walk. Walking is
Mm,
very important.
mhm.
Um, Darren, do you have any final words of wisdom for us? Anything you feel like, yeah, is like on your heart to share before we end our time together?
You've been your questions have been so so great that you've pulled some out throughout this our time together. I think the one thing that I kind of mentioned it, but I think that's really important that I found um, very helpful in my journey as I continue to just live a high quality life as I age is yeah, just reminding people to be open to other ways, to new perspectives, to try things and just look at each step that you take as just an experiment and to learn from, right? To just go back to how when we were that's how as young kids we learned to walk. We had to fall and right? Just
Yeah,
that model that same behavior, but take that in our lives now as we if we're wanting to create some changes in our lives for whatever the outcome we want, to just to be open and try to also invite people to just pay attention a little more, slow down and pay attention
mm,
to their behaviors and non-judgmentally. Is this serving me? And pay attention to the thoughts that we have,
yeah,
and non-judgmentally assess them. Um, and I would also add that we learn for those of us I know in my generation, we're not taught to how to emotionally regulate. I'm so grateful that in our society we're moving a little forward and starting to teach that to the younger generation. I'm a part of a caregiving family of a 5-year old, and we're teaching him and encouraging him to name, his emotions and remind him that it's okay to have emotions, but how to regulate them. And I would invite those in the audience who are, let's say, the Gen Xers and older who have not had that to explore, how they, you know, emotionally regulate and maybe explore that avenue of building that skill set.
mhm,
Um, because our behaviors, our emotions will sometimes drive our behaviors if we, that'll probably be another thing is I would invite people to explore that as an area to build their own um, skill set in, just to emotionally regulate
yeah.
a little better.
And exercise is, at least for me, an
Mm,
important tool for that.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Mhm. Darren, if somebody wanted to explore working with you, what is the best way for people to do that?
Yeah, they can go to my website, which is betweentheears.net. It's probably the best way. Or they can email me, Darren at betweentheears.net. I'm also on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn between the ears. So yeah.
I can include all of those handles and addresses in with the interview notes. Make sure everybody has that. Thank you so much for being here with me today and for sharing your wisdom and experience with us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Marie. This is great.
Appreciate you.
Thank you.